Hello and welcome to New York Empire Podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin, Auletta, and the East Division is down to 3 teams, and the playoffs are going to be a bloodbath. We know that. It's DC hosting New York, and then it's a few weeks later, Boston hosting the winner of that one for a chance to go to championship weekend in what will, I believe, in the other divisions be as much of a bloodbath and a mess. But maybe we always say not the Central, we try not to think too much about them, and yet we never know whether Minnesota wins the championship next year. So I'm not going to say that Chicago, who are the fourth or fifth, I think fifth team in the UFA's history to go undefeated, so they are heading to championship weekend. They will be the 1 seed no matter what. And well, I can't say they're heading to championship weekend yet.
No, yeah,
We
not
don't know
yet.
that. Madison and Minnesota still have an opportunity, but that's basically the one division that we've been talking about where there is a clear hierarchy of a 1, a 2, and a 3. And when it comes to the East Division, which we come back to that, it could have been the Empire being third because they'd never beaten Boston, but no, now the Empire has a win against Boston, and now each of the big 3 have all beaten one another. So we will talk about this one through first the lens of the Boston Glory win for the Empire, and then we're going to preview DC, New York. I think as much as you and I would love to get into what you've been doing in the run series over the summer or what I've been up to joining Woody after 15 years, I feel like we have to get to business.
Yeah, that's fine. My 5K times are not impressive. We nobody looked them up. Um, the game that we just got to have on Saturday was so fun. It was perfect because you had, like, we'll say quote unquote low stakes, right? I think both teams and all the players on the fields absolutely wanted to win, and they played like it. They played hard, they played aggressive, but they played in like a fun and safe manner. And what we had, if you just tuned in and you had never seen a high level game before, or this was new to you, you got to see just like this absolutely fun shootout, a bunch of absolutely wild catches, uh, just crazy tip plays. You got to see it all. And then it just, it's only going to get amped up and better as we move forward. It just, this was a great game and it was super fun. And I'm glad we got to experience it because they could have mailed it in and it could have just been whatever. But instead, just perfect.
Well, I'll say, as a broadcaster, I'm when I saw the Empire schedule come out, I was excited. Oh, the Empire heading out to that West Coast road trip to start the season. But when I saw it was 5 home games, obviously I was a little bummed because I was like, the more home games, the more games I get to do, the more fun we have. And then, of course, uh, the National Friday Night Frisbee, they get one of those games. And I'm like, oh, okay, 4 broadcasts out of a 12-game regular season schedule. It's a little bit of a bummer. You know what I mean? I would love to be involved. That said, the double overtime against DC and then this game against Boston, and I can look back at this season and say, you know what? I actually got a lot of highlights. And then the Philly game as well. And I feel like I got my full. Like it wasn't going back to the years when the Empire were completely dominating, and I would go through a whole game, and I'm like, man, Ryan Oscar had one huck, and it was wide open to Ben Yacht. And there have been not a single bang bang play. Like it is just the Empire just taking care of business clinically. And those games, again, winning is awesome. And you get a championship weekend, you can guarantee those things. You can book your ticket early. That's really good stuff. But again, with this kind of Empire team and then even the Glory team and the DC Breeze, none of them are infallible. None of them are perfect. And you have to win these 50-50 balls. And you've got to take these chances, which I think is where we begin this, that the Empire finishing the regular season at 7-5 after beating the Glory 22-21, as you mentioned, a game that was totally outrageous in terms of highlights, which we will have. I will have you rank them. So we're going to do in a macro, and then we're going to go through some of the amazing highlights. That means that the Empire also 4 straight wins to end the season, with DC and Boston heading into the postseason final, having lost their season finale because DC also lost to Philadelphia on the same day at the same time. The most surprising thing to me from that game is that for Boston, there was no Carapella in the short field. There was no Ryan Dinger. There was no Babbitt. There was no Ethan Fortin, no Tanner Johnson-Go, no Benjamin Horsberger. So that's a lot of D names I just mentioned. Yes, Carapella and Dinger, but Carapella has also been out for a few weeks now. Of the injury concerns that Boston has, I would probably predict that he's the worst of it. Having talked to the coach of the Glory, Sam Rosenthal, before the game, he said, hey, if we were in the playoffs right now, pretty much all these guys would go. It's just a matter of not today. And we still want our 20 to compete. And they did. The 20 did compete. But what was shocking to me, at least in the first half of that game, was that the Empire and the Boston Glory were both more than willing to huck up the deep ball. That was something that they were unafraid to do. They and it was also, of course, that they were being pushed out. So everybody was deciding to huck it because that is what both the other defenses were trying to force. And yet I felt like the way the disc was hanging up, that some of those just were a little bit ill advised, even though they were the right look. So Boston goes 7 of 15 and New York goes 9 of 13, which again, I don't have Calvin Brown and I'm the Empire going 9 of 13 from my Hucks. I'm overwhelmingly excited about that prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure on the metrics on it. Some of those might have been, they're the buzzer beaters. So, take it with a grain of salt. It might be a few less, but it's almost Rushmeyer barely again did not complete a huck. I don't know what his deal is. He can't seem to complete a long throw. Such a good thrower. It's silly. But yeah, I think I think part of what we got was also because the game didn't quite matter as much, but everyone still took it seriously and tried really hard. So, on the broadcast, you guys mentioned that the wind kind of was like very deceptive and that it wasn't very strong, but it just put that little bit of either stoppage or floatage on a disc, and it just resulted in all of these like acrobatic plays where defenders had time to catch up, or it just the offense couldn't just stride it out. And sometimes when we've seen New York and Boston in the past, I was super excited for either Orion Cable, Tanner Johnson Go, Babbitt, whatever, just playing against some of the Empire's big players. And I was super excited for, really close jump balls or different, and not like that the throw is a jump ball from the get-go, but like, you hope you get some close defensive plays and who's going to come out on top. And we haven't always gotten that. So for this, where everybody is just shooting and then the wind just played its role perfectly and just making all of them very contestable, it was just so fun. And it wasn't like one-sided. I mean, everybody was getting in on it. So it was, yeah, it was a treat.
Yeah, I mean, right before we get to the highlights here, I want to mention that the big Empire story, the headline going in was that Ben Dameron, who had played just one game for Carolina, which was actually a makeup game in 2023. So when you talk about games with no stakes, that game had absolutely no stakes that he played in. He played both sides of the disc for that one. So this was really his first official UFA debut where he's important. It's a game that I know you say it's meaningless, but it wasn't, because obviously
No,
the Empire are
yeah.
going into the postseason. I think it did mean more to them than it had to for Boston for all the points that we just laid out here. Dameron's line in the game was 1 goal, 3 assists, no blocks, 2 hockey assists, a +2. He threw for 470 total yards, and he mixed that up with 227 throwing, 246 receiving. Also had 2 turnovers. The only thing I wonder when I watched him play in that game is there a certain line or a threshold for good offensive players where I know chemistry matters, and I think we tend to be very apologetic and say, hey, it's going to take a little bit for this to click. You look at some of the young players that have figured a few things out over the season for the Empire. I would say even defensively. Defensively, they started to figure out, as you mentioned, the chemistry between Agami Contreras and Sam Jonas and just working through things in the backfield. Alati as well, mixing in there. But when you have a player like Ben Dameron and you add that to the O-line, it was very much like Calvin Brown. You're saying, well, that's the kind of talent that it just makes sense. Like, this is going to work out just fine. But yet, in that first half, I still felt like the only times he was touching the disc was they were pushing him towards the sideline, and he was kind of agreeing to do that. And it felt like, yes, the break throws especially, were magnificent throughout the game. He's got some of the best break throws around, and adding that element, I think, to the Empire offense helped a lot horizontally. But in terms of his timing and where he needed to be, you could still feel like, yeah, maybe with chemistry, things would get better. But then there was those moments in the second half when he's working with Randolph and working with Jack, and you go, no, that is just an elite offensive talent. So I guess to say, do you feel like there's a threshold where it's like chemistry does matter until a certain point where you're like, no, that's when those elite offensive players, and they're going to figure it out very quickly.
I mean, they do figure it out quickly, right? You get a feel for what somebody wants. Also, if you're communicating like after a play, like, hey, what did you see there? What do you want me to do there? Like, I was a relatively short lefty, and I often hit like little high release breaks right over people's
Yeah.
shoulders. And if you don't know that, you might be in the front of the stack, and your first look might not just be to the break side. You might think, oh, I'll give this guy something easier or something over here. But no, I just want to pop it over their shoulder. Don't even worry about it. You're already open. Don't do anything. So chemistry matters. You figure it out as you go. It's just I feel like the adjustment period is definitely shorter and you also have to see like what the defense is doing, and then you kind of get used to everybody, and it just kind of it's a shorter time period is what I would say. Anecdotally, in like 2019, we had a practice before the season started where Jimmy Mickle and Chris Kotcher were at practice. So the O line we were running was like me, Bo, Kotcher, Mickle. I don't know, like two basically. Oh, I guess Jack was there. Basically it was like 6 world-class players and me. Like comical that I was like in the mix somehow. And we started, and the first few reps of the scrimmage, the defense was just like punching us in the face. I mean, we had very good defense. That's not unreasonable, but like we kept talking in between plays, and we were like, what is happening? Like, why can't we figure this out? Like, what's going on? And we think it was like we were trying to run too many like plays instead of just like letting everybody kind of like settle in and do our thing. And we just said, you know what? Screw it. No play. Like, let's just go out there. Let's just everybody do what you're comfortable with and play smart. And then we started rolling, and we beat them pretty soundly the next few points. And it like looked like a world-class offense with 6 world-class players in me. And so that was super fun. And then Chris and Jimmy didn't end up on the team. The team did great anyway. It didn't matter. But there was still an adjustment period, even with that level of talent. It was like basically a World Games team with me standing there like, hi. So like, and even that, there's an adjustment period. And I'm sure when UltiWorld does recaps of like their like Team USA tryouts and everything, there's always people that stand out or don't, or you can tell like, oh, the chemistry between so-and-so and so-and-so looked great. And it's like, there's an adjustment period, even for the top level players. You just got to talk and you got to figure it out. So he adjusted, and then he did great.
Yeah, I think it's also beneficial that he had played in the past club with Jack Williams, and now he's currently playing club with John Randolph. So having the two guys that touch the disc the most for the Empire offense is very helpful. And Jack, I probably didn't do a good enough job on the broadcast mentioning how good his line was. He was 60 of 62 season highs in completions and throwing yards, with 608 total yards, 3 for 3 on his hucks, 4 assists, 4 hockey assists. So Jack was just good. That's what Jack was. Jack was just good in that game. And then Randolph, 584 total yards, 288 throwing yards, 296 receiving yards for 584 total yards, as I said. So again, John Randolph just continuing to be an MVP caliber guy, and Jack rounding into not maybe his, I thought this was like his second or third best game of the season, because he didn't have to do Jack stuff, right? He didn't have to like really descend, but it was just a really steady day for the office from Jack.
Yeah, Jack played great. I don't think we need to speak more of that. I want to say one more thing about adjustments. There's also that a slight adjustment of the much wider field. And, I think Dameron stayed a little tight at times in the beginning. And when the team like started breaking out a little wider, everything got a little easier. There were times, and it's even at the end of the game, they also got super tight on that like close sideline or the far sideline. And, everything looked a little hard. The windows were all small, and it was like, oh, are they going to turn it over and let Boston tie it up? And part of that was just like everybody was a little too tight, and I think Dameron was in the mix there. So sometimes just because you make slightly different cuts on that super wide field, when you go for a swing or you have that space, you can go a little wider and a little less directly at the disc, and the thrower can just put it out to space. That is also an adjustment both for like throwers and receivers when you're first starting out.
Hey Empire fans, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is your home for all the latest Empire gear. From hats to hoodies to discs and coaching, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is the best place to get yourself ready for the next Empire game.
Hola Empire aficionados, ShopEmpireUltimate.com es tu casa para todo lo nuevo de Empire. Desde cachuchas a sudaderas a frisbees y entrenadores. ShopEmpireUltimate.com es el lugar para que te alistes para el siguiente juego de Empire.
All right, so now time for the highlights, time for editor Dan to make his money and do his work and try to find these highlights in the game package that's cut by the UFA and put that on top of these, because we're going to try our best. There were 9 plays in that game that kind of made me in the booth. I generally sit and stand depending on where we are, because of the height of how far up the booth is. But I will tend to get up as a disc is in the air for a huck or something and get that excitement up. But in this game, I just felt like I was sweating because I was standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down. It was like a Richard Simmons training video from the 1980s. It was constant. And what we've done is I've separated 9 plays that on a normal game, I would say, well, that was the highlight. That was the one I had to get right. That will be all over Instagram, whatever. And we had 9 of those in this game. So in no particular order, it is Takana's catch over Snonagel's back, Oliver Faye's catch in front of 2 defenders, Sam Jonas towing the line, Yacht's tip to JR, accidental. I guess to say accidental, we can ask Yacht. Yacht's tip to Faye to end the quarter, which was very much on purpose. Yacht's catch over 2 in the end zone for halftime, which is also very much on purpose. Shapiro's layout from Shepard, and then a Ray Tetro sky, which I'll give you a second here. I know you didn't write them down, but I'll give you a second here to digest all 9 of those plays, because I will mention that Ray Tetro, good on Ray, because he had not played since 2023 as a member of the O-line, comes back to play D-line. He got hurt early in the season, so he was, again, making his season debut, having been around the team all season long. And then Peter Borth also returned from college and World's commitments and other commitments to have 3 goals and a block. And that is a huge player. That is Peter Borth, the Northeastern product, all coming off a good college season as well, who's been added back to the Boston Glory lineup. And that is not a bad thing at all for them. All right, I've given you some time here. I wonder if we have the same order. I mean, 9 is a lot for us not to have a disagreement here, but I guess we'll go in reverse order and kind of count it down.
All right.
So
you want my list? You want my list? Do you want to go like shot for shot? I think we should do my. How do we want to do this?
How about this? I'll give you my list in reverse order, and then you shout out if I got something insanely wrong, and give me your list where we make our mistakes. Okay.
All right.
So I guess we'll do them. Or maybe how about this? I'll do them in 3 play increments. All right. So if you have a different,
all right,
7, 8, 9
a bottom 3. Yeah, sure. Let's
I think that's how
we can rule some out.
So to me, the bottom 3, and I cannot believe I'm saying it in this way. So Yacht's accidental tip to JR, I think, is number 9 here.
It was just a happy accident. Correct. That's the bottom.
Now, Ray Tetro, his sky, because it came on Yacht, I think that's why it's even in this category at all. But he did go up early, and I think he winds up skying anybody because he goes up early. He has the space. So that one goes to 8 because it did feel kind of like a routine sky. Just the 2 guys that he got it over were 5-6 inches taller than him. I think that's what we're speaking about.
It was a nice catch. Yeah, same bottom area. That's close enough.
Yeah. And then I cannot believe I have Shapiro's layout from Shepard as
no.
That's wrong, right?
In fairness, it was in my next catch. Yeah, in the bottom you got to put the sideline catch from Jonas. It was a great catch.
Okay, that's fair.
But it wasn't like some otherworldly like catch. Look at your feet, swing your whole body where you somehow tap one toe in while you're falling.
Yeah.
No, it was like he had space and it was okay. Yeah, so I disagree with that. Those were my bottom 3.
I think it's totally fair. I think it's.
But then, in fairness, moving forward, somehow my next.
Give me your 4, 5, 6 then.
I might be missing one on my list here. We'll have to see what I've omitted accidentally. But I actually next do have the Shapiro catch from Max Shepard, which is wild. It's wild, and I think that highlight plays better for a casual fan and looks really, really awesome. As a more nuanced fan, I also still really like the play. Part of that, though, is because we got to see the Empire D-line work it a little bit more, probably because the game was, quote, low stakes. So the D-line stayed out a little more and they got to work on some chemistry, which is also a treat because you got to see Max Shepard play a little more offense. You got to see Antoine play a little more offense. And, those are super fun players that you want to see more of, on the offensive side of the disc. So Max Shepard rips it. Shapiro runs. He lays out. It's awesome. He's pretty high up, but caught it with a weird trailing hand kind of thing. That just looked a little awkward to me. The play itself was still very awesome. It's an awesome catch. It's an awesome throw, but somehow low on the list.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, usually that is the number 1. Usually it's a top 10 in the UFA's top 10 of the week. I said the height of the layout was also what was incredible too. I mean, it was chest level, and But to your point, he had it timed out perfectly. I think he knew 5 strides before that disc is going to be the perfect range for a layout. But I am going to have to catch it high. So I think, again, the height of where he caught the layout makes it more difficult. It's not like he was catching it where he knew he was catching it right about where his knees would have been. He had to catch it high early in the jump, which means you have to also fall farther with the disc. And Bo Kittredge would always say that was the hardest thing, is that the higher you lay out, that means the more distance you have to gain a little bit of speed with the disc in your hand. So it's even harder to keep possession when you hit the ground. And I think that's also why, technique-wise, he grabbed the disc the way he did, because he was able to then grab it, to your point, slanted, and then straighten it out. He had enough time to then straighten out his wrist so that he could land on his chest. Yeah, picture perfect stuff.
That is a very good in-depth analysis of why I think he laid out and caught it like that. So I will agree.
Thanks. As someone who's done that 1.5 times ever, maybe, and I think both on the beach, the things I have to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was your 6 somehow. So yeah, what are your 4 and your 5 then?
I have the yacht buzzer tip. Also plays really fun. I could see that being like a top play of the week, right? Because it's a buzzer beater. It's fun. It has like a different dynamic to it. And you have Yacht, one of the best players in the league, receiving a pass from a dynamic Max Shepard laser down the field that isn't going to make it because it's a little too low, because Max didn't really have, he had to rush that throw. He had like half a second to get that throw off. So he does, but it's a little low. And then Yacht, just like a perfect little tip, and you just see it happening, and it's just poetry. And you can see that the Glory defenders are just like, no, you see that in slow motion when it happens to you. It's like, oh my, no, how did this happen? Yeah. So that
I also have that as 5. So credit to you. And then the 4. This is the one I'm interested in.
What's your 4? I only have 3 left, so maybe I'm missing one.
So what we have not mentioned so far is the Kana catch, the Faye catch, the Yacht catch over 2 in the end zone for halftime. And do I not know how to count to?
Okay, there were only 8. Okay.
There were only 8. I don't have a 5.
I'm vindicated. All right. Yeah. Great. No, this is perfect. So my list is great. Okay. So next up, coming in at number 3 somehow, again, another play that could be a number 1 on any week is the Kana catch over the back.
That's I had 3 too.
Yeah. Okay. Because it was great. It was super athletic. I've made similar plays before where you catch a defender unaware and they don't expect you to jump that early, and you're kind of like reaching around them, and it's an awesome catch. And he's, did he end up the league leader in receiving yards?
He did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, top-notch play by a top-notch player, super fun, good stuff. Number 3, somehow.
Yeah, Yacht found himself in the end zone more often. He had 4 goals, that being Yacht, and an assist in the game, but he just wasn't eating up the big yardage the way that Kana was on those hops.
Yeah, he caught a few goal liners, I think, and then he kind of did the dirty work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, now
I agree with that one too. And this is kind of the discredit to the Empire is that, and I think the reason why I knocked a few points off this one is because I asked Drew after the game, I was like, did you get an up call? And he was like, for being a professional sideline, we probably could have heard a louder one.
Okay. Yeah.
He also said with the Kana, the way you guard him is that, he was the tough thing for Drew was that he thought the disc was so much higher, because I mean that was also why the up call came, if you want to call it late, but because it was so low, like he was waiting for he found the body, he was right where he needed to be, and he was waiting for either the up call or that moment when it looked like the Kana was going to start to jump, and then he was able to turn his hips, but that moment never came. That's why he never turned around.
Yeah.
Because the disc was so low that there was, again, no moment for him. He would have had to spin around completely 180 on the spot to make a play on it. But yeah, so he would have needed an up call way before you would expect an up call for that.
As an offensive player who has made similar kind of style catches where like they don't expect you to jump early and like reach back past them, or like one always sticks out in my head from many years ago where I actually like laid out back towards my defender, but like, kind of snaked around him. It was safe. There's no contact. Yeah. But I just remember like, as I was kind of diving past him, he had this look of confusion, like, what? Are you going to hit me? Like, I just kind of like slunk around him and like, saved the disc. It was going to hit him in the back. Yeah, sometimes there's nothing you can do on defense, but it's super satisfying on offense.
I'm so sorry that I can't find any of those highlights of you doing those things, unless you find
that was a club game from long ago.
I was going to say, Well, yeah. So that's on what's that? That's on SD or that's
No,
on.
it just lives in my memory. No one even there's nothing. We can't
There
port that
might be
to.
a photo somewhere of that game occurring, or
No,
yeah.
I
So
doubt it. I doubt it.
well, back then you had to stay still for a while after you made the play, right? It was like a
Well,
3-hour process as the film developed,
since you
right? How
brought it
did
up,
they?
I will say that my absolute top-notch favorite rule change from club to professional ultimate is that you can move in between calls. I think it's so
Ooh,
silly that everybody needs to revert back to where they were and go through this whole thing. And it just takes all the nuance out of the game because sure, we might go back to our relative position, but like I was speeding up and you weren't, or like all these different things. And I think it's very silly. Just allowing
yeah.
everybody to keep moving and then there's no like, oh, violation, restart nonsense. Like, yeah, I think that's absolute
But
favorite
you're
rule.
not considering the fun of calling violation on someone when you and that person are completely not in the play at all or
Oh,
irrelevant. When you're 40 yards from where the play occurred and you just get to keep saying
and you could
violation
spike call it
and
too. Yeah, that's also
right,
top notch. Just violation. Why? Well, I hate you. Like
right. Terrific. Terrific.
yeah.
Okay, now I know we definitely have the same 2-1 as well here. So is Ben Yacht in your 2 spot with his catch over 2 in the end zone? Because here's what I want to
Well
do. I
done.
agree with you.
Well done.
But I do want to make the argument as to how this one could have been won over the Oliver Fay catch.
That's fine.
Because
I was let me hear it. Let me hear it.
yeah, so I think the argument is that the Oliver Fay catch, he did have a turnaround and he did lay out backwards, but his layout was more from a standing position and the disc was floating towards him in a way for Yacht. One, for Yacht, he had to catch that over Ryan Cable. So as far as height, level of difficulty. 2, he had to stay in bounds and he did have to also find the sideline so that he could tow himself in bounds. 3, it winds up coming at the buzzer. So this is a one and done opportunity. This is like the moment it has to happen. And 4, it was also, well, no, it was also over 2. So there is no 4. So those are, I think the 3 is that, or 4 is actually the angle of the disc as well. That disc was trailing a lot more than the Fay catch. The Fay catch, it was a flat disc. He was able to get underneath, where the Yacht catch was, again, a trailing disc, top of his peak, which, again, for those of us who aren't 6'6", 6'7", like he was up there, and again, still had to have the presence of mind to toe the sideline. So I think if anyone said 1, they would not be wrong. Again, it was my 2, just because the Oliver Fay catch, this is really just coming down to vibes and the wow factor. And if anything, Takana could have been 2 as well for that same reason, where I'm up in the booth and I actually got the Takana wrong. I called it a throw instead of a catch because it's one of those where I just kind of, as a broadcast, I want to say, what the hell did I just see? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so for the Fay, I had the presence of mind to call that. But Fay's catch gets 1 because I watched it and I was like, I don't think I saw that right. Like, was he behind them and then he was in front of them? Was teleportation involved in that? How did that happen? So I think with the Yacht thing, it was more, again, it's premeditated. You know what's going to happen. You know that if he's going to catch that, that's where he has to catch it. That's how he has to catch it. He's got to read on it. He knows it's all happening. Oliver Fay was just like, hey, how about I just reach in front of these 2 guys from a standstill and catch this disc? And that's, I think that's all my reasoning as to why that would be the 1, but I understand the argument the other way.
And standstill too is like kind of not doing it justice because he's actually running away from it and then like hard stops, jumps back. I mean, he basically did the chronic catch but better in the same game, which is wild. So you don't see that very often. Yeah, the Yacht buzzer beater from Antoine was fun. And while I'm watching it, I realized time is running out and Antoine has it and very capable thrower, just doesn't often chuck it. Had a nice huck the week before, but that makes it super interesting. I'm like, oh, how's he even going to throw this, half the length of the field? Like, what's it going to look like? Like, what is he just going to float a backhand that anybody can run under? Like, what is it? And instead, he just like a quick, like wrist shot and it just up and arch rainbows and it's going. And it's like, wow, that was a perfect throw for this. Like that adds to the highlight too. And then, yeah, Yacht just like coming down over top notch other big boys and then keeping his feet in. Like I understand if people want to say that's number 1. I mean, most weeks that is number 1. It's just this game was insane with the highlights, which is why I said it from the very beginning. It was just a treat. So, but yeah, no, I think the Fay catch had a different level of difficulty and surprise because like you knew Yacht was either going to catch it or not in that situation. And then like the play had to happen because time was expiring. Like I get it. Yeah, I don't know. The fake catch for me, it was just like it had that like absolute wow factor where like sometimes when that happens, everyone loses their mind and it's like, what are we watching? Like, did a human being
Yeah.
just do that in front of other also very athletic human beings? Like every once in a while that happens and you just like you can't believe that someone did it. So
Well, very rarely do we ask for too much engagement, but if you're watching on YouTube, let us know your list. Let us know
oh yeah.
your top three, or if you're just listening, again, hit us up on social media, Instagram, Twitter, wherever. So we are asking you to do a little bit of homework here. And the other reason I want to give credit to Oliver Fay is because the way that last season you and I praised Charles Weinberg and Sam Jonas, who, Weinberg did get a little bit of shouts from national attention sometimes, or at least other teams around the league. Because again, I don't put everything on Lepler and Ruffner and the swing pass or whatever, but there were other teams that would know about Weinberg and just how good he was. And Sam Jones was kind of the guy last season that kind of went under the radar, probably the best underrated player on the team. And this season, I mean, Orion Cable in that game, a game that, again, Tanner Johnson-Go did not play in, so there was no him switching over for O-line points. There was no Jeff Babbitt switching over for O-line points. So a lot of the big balls or the big boys plays, as you mentioned, again, Peter Borth, yes, but Orion Cable, and he was limited to just 1 goal, 1 assist, and 1 block. And that is a lot of credit to Oliver Fay, who was primarily defending Orion Cable. And while there weren't set matchups in that game, it was usually Antoine Davis chasing around Calvin Stoughton, who also was kind of limited in the game, and then Fay chasing around Cable. So to me, this season, Oliver Fay is that guy. He is last season's Weinberg or Sam Jonas, where the games that he did not play, the Empire defense just did not look as good. And when he does play, that Empire D line does look that good.
And yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. He has been like the punch the defense needed. Because it's a defense filled with a lot of good players, but especially when Antoine was a little hurt in the beginning of the season, he didn't look the same. And now you're kind of getting both of these guys available and healthy at the same time, even on a D line that they're a defensive unit that didn't have, all of their like probable top 20 for playoff weekends. And credit to some of the other guys. They played well. They had some good plays. They covered some good space. But yeah, Fay and Antoine Davis just like top notch, really peaking at the right time, coming together. The defense is just looking so good. And yeah, Oliver Fay can hang with whatever big bad you want to throw out there. And when you have players like that, it just makes everybody else's defensive assignment a little easier.
Yeah, I just say that because he doesn't really get as much attention elsewhere. I mean, I can admit that he played for Austin. I remember seeing him at championship weekend. I remember knowing that he was one of, the big boys who make those big plays. And I think sometimes you look at those big bodies and say, all right, they're a good defender because they're big. It's kind of that conversation we had last week. Are you athletic or are you just tall? And for him, I thought, okay, he was just one of those tall Austin guys. And then here he comes to New York. And I'm like, well, no, there's actually so many more layers to how good this guy is defensively than what we saw. And speaking of Oliver Fay and Antoine Davis, they will have to be as good as they were in the last 2 weeks against DC, because it is not much time to think about what you've done against Boston and celebrate that victory. Carlini Field is the location for this playoff game, 7 p.m. on Saturday night on watchufa.tv. The 20s are basically set already. And most of the time, the Empire and the Breeze, they both tend to be pretty cheeky, where they'll give you 18 and then they kind of figure it out around the edges. But no, based on injuries, based on everything else, the 20s are subject to change, but both teams have put 20 actives already on that list, which I think says a lot about the confidence they have in the 20 players that they have selected. So for the Empire, there's no Ben Dameron, and Sam Alston is still questionable. So it's basically the Philly lineup that the Empire crushed Philadelphia with, except Marquez Brownlee is also back. And then Jacob Cowan, as I said, Marquez and Auletta are all back from having missed the Boston game. And then DC is also just about at full strength. Cole Jurek will likely play, and when he does, though, he will likely still be lingering injuries, and he won't be at 100%. And then Gus Norbaum, also questionable. And then Michael Wagner, a young defender who has been also sensational, underrated, I think, on the big conversations that are being had. Though I think, in all fairness to the Philadelphia broadcasts, and I mean, DC has done a good job of speaking up their young player. Then I think he's also been mentioned by National. So I think Wagner's actually a bigger loss than you might think. It's a name that people don't know. Miles Grovich is back, which he was so good in the 8 goal win that DC had earlier at Carlini Field. And then Christian Boxley, Moussa Jah, Frederick Farrat, those are, again, 3 just top-tier athletes around the East Division and 3 scary guys for many different reasons. So DC looking very athletic in this game with their 20. But they are coming off a pretty ugly loss with a lot of the players that are also in the 20 this week. Philly, there were just 2 breaks compared for DC to Philly's 10 breaks, 19 turnovers to Philly's 9, and then they got stomped in the middle 2 frames, 15-6 in total in the second and third quarter. There was some rotation, yes, but it still doesn't explain the final result other than it didn't matter for DC, and Philly had a lot of reasons to try to end their season on a high, as hot as a hot bird could possibly get. I think that's the reasoning, but still, if I'm DC, I don't want to take that kind of L going into the postseason. And looking at both those games, again, I think some of the success that New York had against Boston and then some of the issues that DC had, my key to this game is the ability that both these offenses, who I don't expect to be perfect, the ability that both these offenses have to take the disc back. I think the offenses that don't get broken, that will be the team, I think, that winds up being the victor. So I wouldn't say it's just break percentage necessarily, because that comes down to the D-line offense, but I think the ability of these O-lines to not give up those breaks easily are going to be really important.
Yeah, kind of playing into that a little bit too then will be, how much run will coaches give their D-lines when they get the disc, when the D-line is playing offense. Like, I love that Matt Stevens let the D-line play a good bit without calling timeouts in this game. He used a few towards the end of the game to try and secure the victory, whatever, give the offense another rep. They practiced a pretty situational time one where, like, you didn't really need to do that because the game, you don't have to win it, whatever, but it was a good practice rep and it ended up working out. So, yeah, I think, will the offenses be able to get it back if they make a mistake? I mean, we've seen the Empire offense kind of ratchet that up the last few weeks. They have LeBar, Yacht, Jack, Cowan's a big body, and Randolph. So Randolph. So they have the desire and the willpower, especially if they're all feeling good. There's no reason they can't get some back without, and the counterpoint to that is, will DC immediately call a timeout and put their offense back on the field? Because then the Empire O-line doesn't get a chance to do that. But then, I know DC in the past has liked running around that Empire offense and tiring them out on turns. Yeah. So it's that's always a very interesting kind of chess match, the game within the game. I don't know, but if both teams give their defensive offensive units some run, not to give too much away, if DC's listening, they're probably not. I would say advantage Empire at this point. I think the offense can get it back, and I think the Empire defensive units are looking good. I feel like they're starting to gel with the lines they've been putting out. They have just good mixes on D1, D2, D1.5, however they're kind of mixing, matching, mingling. I'm really liking what I'm seeing the last few weeks. And the results are there too. They needed to win a bunch of these games and they did. So I feel like they're coming together and peaking at the right time.
Yeah, a four-game win streak, and I think you look back to the 2 DC wins over Boston in the last few weeks, and you, for DC, say, well, that is the best version of DC. That's the team that you felt was a championship weekend favorite last season, and you know how hungry they are. They got the championship weekend, but they were upset by Minnesota in the way that they were. You know that they're as hungry as ever, but for this New York team, not say that they've found their hunger, but yeah, they are finally clicking. Everything makes sense. Everybody knows their roles. And you have, again, guys like Ethan Lehman, who, not to say that you're too young, you don't know what you're doing, but there is a youthful exuberance to him that he's just doing good things. And the other teams are not say they're not scouting for him, but they're not expecting him to jump the unders or things like that, right?
He had that nice post block.
Yeah, even last season, you look at the work that Mike Dross. We would joke that Mike Dross is just a name in New York, and it's true. I'll go to championship weekend, and they don't have any idea who the Dross brothers were. And I think it took them really taking the record and being the 1 and 2 in blocks for people. Again, I'm not talking about the commentators. I'm talking about other players around the league. They're oh, those twins in New York, and that's all they knew. But by the last season, when they had to take a little more responsibility on defensively because, again, Ben Katz is gone, Jeff Babbitt is gone from the defense. So there was more responsibility on Mike, especially on those unders. I think teams were prepared. Teams knew what he wanted to do, and they knew that they were going to have to be patient around it. And to that point about DC, yeah, I mean, which DC D-line offensive will we get? If they're able to get that turn, are we going to get that patient one, or are we going to get the one that is all gas, no brakes, and it doesn't happen? So I don't know. Here's what I want from this game. I think if it is, not to say a shootout where we're talking hucks, but if there's a lot of bang plays, the way the Empire have been playing the last 4 games, I think they get a slight advantage. But if this is both teams with 350 completions, I think you definitely give the advantage still to DC. Because if DC can grind this game down, I mean, that is what New York did to Boston. There was that point in the third quarter where it was like 6.5 minutes on the field, and that Glory O-line never recovered. And I think the Glory still had the horses in the fourth to come back again, but they didn't because they had run out of gas, and that happened in 1 point in the third quarter. So if this game is close in the third quarter or early in the fourth, and there's that 1 point where one of these O-lines has to run out for 4 minutes and they just get worn down, that could be the difference in this game, which, again, as you and I having to break it down the following week, I'm not looking forward to that because, again, a 4-minute, 40 completion point.
Probably more than that, yeah.
Whatever it is, like, yeah, that is exhausting just to think about. And yeah, I mean, for the players on the field, they're running it and they deserve a lot of credit, but it's not fun, obviously, for watchers and viewers and all those different things. So I would hope that this game winds up being an athletic contest or an athletic shootout. Like, obviously Christian Boxley, like, we're going to see athleticism at the wazoo. This is going to happen regardless. I mean, Grovich, like, you're talking about like elite athletes in the East Division, but I still think a 50-50 game with a lot of jump balls and things like that, it could go the Empire's way the way they've been playing. And I think it would behoove them to play with a little more chaos than DC. Like, you do want to add a chaotic element to Carlini Field, or else DC is just going to kind of routinely grind you into paste.
Yeah. I it's a shame Calvin Brown is out now because that is certainly like the firepower and, it was just looking top notch, and it was like really unlocking another level to the team. But, we did get to see this weekend that there were other players who were willing to shoot. And, like you said, the wind held them up a little bit, maybe not the perfect whatever. But I think that if they take the shots when they are there within reason, and you're like treating it like the proper like playoff game, do or die atmosphere, as long as they take them, I think they will do well. If they hold them a little too much and try and be like, 99.9% safe, it might kind of work against them a little bit. I think they need to loosen up the game a little bit, and then you hope DC responds in kind, and that's where they can make some mistakes. They can get the errant throws, out of either the offense or the defense. If, it's always funny when you watch a game of Ultimate where like first like 6 or 7 points, there's no turns, right? And then all of a sudden there's a turnover. And then the D-line turns it over. And then the O-line turns it over again. And then the D-line turns it over again. And you're like, I just watched 35 minutes of no mistakes. And now everyone forgot how to play in this 90-second window. Like, what happened? So, I think if Empire can kind of uncork that in DC, I think it plays a little more into Empire's favor.
Well, I always wonder if that is because the D-line have kind of emboldened themselves. Once they've got the first turn, it feels like the dam is breaking. So if that Empire O-line does turn the disc over, or it depends on how that disc is turned over too. Is it just like a throwaway, or is it, AJ Merriman or Fall or Ja or Grovich or somebody just going and getting that disc? I think it's a little different from an errant mistake. Like, I thought Oliver Chartok against Boston was interesting because he had a really good game, but then all 3 of his turns weren't the Glory player going and getting it. It was Oliver kind of making a mistake, and the Glory, for, again, Oliver's credit, they were able to get the disc back, that being the Empire O-line, and Oliver's a huge part of that as well. Again, there is the 7 now for the Empire, there is no weak spot on their defensive abilities for their O-line. So there are so many factors about this DC Breeze game, but it also, I think, comes down to the biggest part of it. I'll give you the final word here, is that these are 2 teams that hate is such a strong word, but I think these iterations of these teams, like, these are the guys we want to beat. And Boston, it's so funny because they are the 1 seed, but I mean, even the vibes, I'll tell you from that game, like even the vibes in that game, like it is DC against New York. Like that, those are the two teams, they want to punch each other in the mouth more than anybody else in the division. And that's the rivalry. And that is what big games are made of. And so as much as you think that DC beat New York by 8 early in the season, but then New York returned the favor in a double overtime win. So really, truly have no idea. And all of those X factors we've talked about, you might be able to throw so many of them out the window if this game, again, just becomes a rivalry game and just chaos and emotion and comebacks and all those different things. And again, I also think that does support the Empire a little bit. So I'll give you the final word here about, again, playoff games, rivalries, and any advice you might have for the heat of the moment.
No, heat of the moment. I was always a lunatic, so don't sometimes you need a lunatic though on your side, just kind of firing everybody up. But irrelevant. I think that New York DC is the best rivalry in the league. It will remain so for a while. I know Boston was, more of the top dog this year, but they're on a little bit of a skid. I know they've been resting some players in preparation for the playoffs, but you can't convince me that New York or Boston views them as like the team to beat this year. I feel like the way the end of the second half of the season is played out, I think New York and New York and DC both feel like if they win this first game, they can do anything. They just got to get through this first tough game, and then Boston's beatable. Boston's been beaten by a bunch of people, and I think they know they can do it. Boston is still the new kid on the block. Maybe not ultimate wise, but for the UFA, they're still the new kid on the block, and just because they have a slightly better record doesn't mean anything at this point. I truly think that any of these three teams think that they can beat anybody else, which is important. But I think New York has this first matchup. I think they will win. And as somebody who's watching and will be stressed, I would love it if they won by 5, so I could just enjoy it. I like to say that sometimes. But if you tell me that it goes down to double overtime and there are a million crazy plays and we have to make a top 8 list that would dwarf most regular top 10 lists for the whole season, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. Although DC plays a little more small ball, so their highlights are sometimes a little less frequent.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I could see that.
Well, I mean, I think that comes down to it, right? Like this season, Ben Yacht started the year MVP candidate-esque, and I think his last 3 weeks have been phenomenal as well. And there was a little bit of lull in the middle there, but to me, there's like two faces I keep seeing. If this is a Ben Yacht game, the Empire wins. And I don't mean individually. I just mean like if it's a game where you're like, oh, Ben had some great highlights and then the Empire were doing these things. And then the other face I keep seeing in my mind's eye is Andrew Roy. Like if this is a game where I'm like, Andrew Roy is who I'm seeing over and over and over again. DC has won this game. If Andrew Roy and David Bloodgood are the two guys that I'm like remembering from this game, DC has won this game. But again, if it's Ben Yacht and Oliver Fay, then the Empire have likely won this game. So all right, again, this game is where all the marbles come down to, and hopefully you and I are continuing to speak next week, not as a eulogy to the Empire season, but instead to a preparation for a few weeks after that for Boston, who will certainly be happy about using these next few weeks to get healthy, because they, of the trio, are the most banged up, and it's not close. So at Carlini Field at 7 p.m. on Saturday night on WatchUFA.tv. Again, we will not be down there again. Like some of the New York folks will. So please say hello. Get down there. Get your tickets early for that one. It'll be a packed house down at Carlini Field. Or again, enjoy the broadcast on WatchUFA.tv. So we will talk to you next week. But it is playoff time and not a better time of the year, Matt. So thanks so much as always, and thank you to the listeners or the viewers. We will talk to you next week.
I have to say, I will be at Wildwood. Happy Wildwood to those who celebrate. You're always young when you're at the dirty New Jersey shore. It's a magical place.
I know. I set a record this year for telling my regular club teammates that I would not be attending, and I think they've already begun working on me for next year. So maybe this time next year, we'll be breaking down our Wildwood performances. But that'll be for another time. We are already too late. So again, everybody, we'll see you next week.